Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel, Free Mental Health Education. So today I'm going to be talking about one of America's biggest social problems, I believe, and that's gangs in America. Okay, so before I start, I want to give you guys, and especially my new viewers, a brief introduction of myself. I'm a social worker trained in the mental health field. I'm licensed to practice mental health therapies in the state of California, and I'm based out of San Francisco Bay Area. So I've been in this field of mental health for nearly 19 years. And in 2025, it'll be 19 years. And so out of this 19 years, I've been working directly with the gang impacted population for 7 years. Okay, so some of the population, the groups I worked with African American gangs, such as Bloods and Crips. Bloods and Crips, you guys probably may know. If not, they wear red, they have red bandanas. Crips, they wear blue, they have blue bandanas, right? And the other population that I have worked with too, also in the Bay Area, is Asian gangs, and there's various different types of Asian gangs. And so some Asian gangs they emulate the African American gangs. So basically, they claim Bloods and Crips. Okay, so for one of the Asian gangs that I have worked with a lot, okay, are the Cambodian gangs. Okay, and so these guys, these gangs, they pretty much emulate the black gangs. So they claim Bloods and Crips. And then I've also worked with Vietnamese gangs also too. And for a majority of the time that I have worked with them in the past, um, they don't really have like Bloods and Crips. But now times has changed, and so now you're starting to have more Vietnamese gangs that actually claim Bloods and Crips. And also too, I worked with Filipino gangs. Same thing, Filipino gangs they claim Bloods and Crips. Laotian gangs they claim Bloods and Crips. And last but not least, I've worked with Hispanic gangs, and Hispanics gangs basically like in the Bay Area, they're actually one of the biggest gangs. So they're a little bit different. They don't claim Bloods and Crips. Uh, they do have their own gang. They claim Norte, and then the other gang is Sureños, so Sur. And so the Norteños, they wear red, they have red bandanas. The Sureños, they wear blue and they have blue bandanas. So these are the population of gangs I work with extensively. Okay, so a lot of times when I do work with them, they're either in a locked facility or they're out in the community. So they're pretty much in jail or on probation, right? The people that I work with in gangs. Okay, so moving forward, um, yeah, I just want to let you know too that when I have worked with these gang members, uh, I run life skills group, psychoeducation groups. I do individual therapy with them. But before I do individual therapy with gang members, I have to do a mental health assessment first. And so basically, when I do a mental health assessment, this gives me a glimpse into their world and it gives me a better understanding of them, their needs, and the challenges they have when they're out in the community. So, with that said, my channel is to educate and bring awareness to my viewers the topic of mental health because mental health is my scope of practice. Okay, so let's get started. So this video is going to discuss various aspects of gangs. Okay, and like I said, I've been working with gangs for a long time, so I kind of know. I wouldn't say that I'm a expert, but I do have a lot of knowledge into the gang culture. So the topic of the video is going to cover a brief history of gangs, what a gang is, why gangs are formed, the evolution of gangs, why people join gangs, life experience of gang members, gang objectives and their code of conducts, also too, the psychology of gang members and the socialization norms of gang members, right? So keep in mind that everything a person does is based on his environment and what that person may feel was the best option for them at that time. So keep that in mind, okay? All right, so I'm not a gang historian, so I won't focus too long on this history of gangs, but gangs have been around for some time, right? So you have the Italian mob that's been around for a while. You have the African American gangs, right? And I think African American gangs started around the 50s. Hispanic gangs started around the 50s also. And then you have the more current gangs, right? The Southeast Asian gangs. And many of these gangs started in the early 80s. And the reason why is because actually that's when a lot of them migrated to America during the war against communism. So that's just a brief history of gangs, right? I'm not going to cover too much. So let's move on to what is a gang, all right? So, what is a gang? Let's be honest. A gang is a group of people that's been labeled a gang, okay? So, this group of people was given the label of a gang because they have a criminal element among the group, all right? That's pretty much simple it is. It's a group of people that the government considered a gang because there's criminality among the group. So why are gangs formed? Gangs are formed for many reasons. Okay, but what I have known, from the work I've been doing with the people that I interviewed, right, in jails, in the community, gangs are a result of their environment. Okay, so gang formation, these things happen naturally. It's based on their environment. Gangs are formed just as a group of friends are naturally formed. Okay, so for example, groups of friends, they're formed basically because they have similar interests, similar backgrounds, they probably live in close proximity to each other, they go to the same school, and so forth. That's how gangs are kind of formed too, right? There's a group of people that have the similar interests, same background, living proximity, schools that they attend, right? It's close, maybe the same schools. But one thing that's different is that gangs are formed because a need of protection. Okay, so that's one of the biggest things that's different. Is gangs are formed because they need protection. It's due to environment. Um, Growing up, right? These people that tell me growing up, they made gangs because they were bullied. Okay, so for example, I have found during my interviews with a lot of Southeast Asian gang members, okay, in the Bay Area, they told me that they made gangs because they were being bullied by Hispanic people, African Americans, white kids, white people, right? They were getting bullied, and that's why they made those gangs to basically protect themselves. It's based on their environment, and I believe it's the same thing too for African American and Hispanic gangs. As in the past, they were also bullied and oppressed. So now let's kind of move on, right? The next topic is going to be on the evolution of gangs. And so, gangs definitely they evolved. Okay, so it's not like the older, gangs in the 50s, right? So they have evolved, and I'm going to cover that more, right, in the video. And so, gangs are formed for one reason, and that's for protection. So, getting back to the evolution of gangs, this is my opinion as a social worker. This is what I observe just working with people and it's seeing documentaries and stuff like that, but mainly working with people. Okay, most of these early groups that were labeled gangs, right? Um, they had problems, they had conflicts, right? But mainly those groups, they just had fistfights, right? They didn't like have these things that you guys are hearing about now, right? Like shootings, killings, and stuff like that. So I believe that the reason why gangs evolved is because of the changes in American society. Okay? So, for example, right, the earlier gangs in the 50s, right? America's economy in the 50s and 60s, it was actually pretty great, right? Even though America had its racist, era at that time, right? It was racist. But a lot of people had jobs that was including the minorities. And so because of that, they had their basic necessity needs met. And so, there was less stress, right? They had a good economy back then. And then the other thing I believe that was different in the 50s and compared to now was the drugs that were available. Okay. And so primarily back then, it was probably alcohol and cannabis. But I'm not saying that cannabis and alcohol didn't cause problems with families, but I'm just saying that it might have caused tremendous problems like other drugs would. Okay. And then also, too, back then, probably in the 50s, the household probably had two parents household, right? Like you didn't have a lot of single parents back then. It was mainly household that had two parents. So that was always good. It made, families strong, having two parents. And then also too, back then there was a civil rights movement, right? A lot of times minorities in that community believed that knowledge is power and education was very highly valued, right? And so I believe that these factors that I just talked about, right, it kept families strong, right? And the original gangs in the 50s, even though they were, fighting and stuff like that, they still had good sense of direction and had discipline because of that. So I think that's the evolution of it. So that has definitely changed now, and I don't think it's the same, the society. So what went wrong? What changed in society, right? So moving forward, right, to the 1970s, 1980s, right? Actually, no. Let's go backwards. I'm moving a little bit too forward. So what changed in society, right? Um, Kind of going backwards a little bit. So as you know, like you heard about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, right? Them getting murdered, right? These are positive role models, right? Community leaders were put in jail, they were assassinated. Male role models were put in jail or assassinated. What does this mean? Basically, it meant that families were being split. Okay, so a family that had two parent households now became one, right? A one parent household. And if you think about that, right, what that does is it actually puts a lot of, stress, a lot of strain on the mother to having to take care of a family by themselves or by herself, right? And this creates a lot of stress, a lot of mental health issues. Okay. And so it also created a loss of family values and created a lot of instability, right? So moving fast forward to 1970, 1980, this is when I feel like, the harder drugs came in, right? And then it impacted a lot of families like cocaine, heroin, and crack, right? Because of that, the loss of parents, right? Having single family household, um, there was a lot more instability, a lot more stress. Okay. And then the newer people, the newer generation that was born to families like that, right? That became a lot more, traumatic for the kids growing up. And, from there, I believe that they experienced a lot more complex stress and they had a lot of more difficulties growing up, struggling as a youth. And sometimes, too, a lot of the youth growing up, that are involved with gangs, some of them were exposed to hard drugs while in their mother's womb. Okay. And then as time goes by, right, you have children that are having children, which means the next generation is going to get worse because how is a children going to raise another children, especially if that children is in a gang or addicted to drugs and alcohol or both. Okay. And so for me, I'm seeing a picture of the evolving of society, and it's getting worse. Mental health and the morals of American society, has gotten worse. There's just too much pain in America. So the basis of the evolution of gangs is due to the changing of society. As society change, people in their environment change. That's just how it is. And society has gotten worse, in my opinion, as a social worker. So, as you know, I mean, just look at the madness you hear on the TV, the news, the ramming of cars into convenience stores and taking ATM machines, mass looting, mass shootings, shootings on the freeways. It's like watching a Hollywood movie. But you know what? It's real. It's real. This is happening for real. And why? Because of the mental health. So, anyhow, moving forward, why do people join gangs? And every time when I interview a gang member, right, there's always a different response to this question. And there's many reasons why people join gangs. Okay, so some of the responses that I heard during my time interviewing gang members is someone joined because they're curious. But that's actually a really extremely rare case. Most people don't join because they're curious, right? But that's rare. Some people do, but that's rare. And so, other reasons why people join gangs. What? Well, some people join gangs because they had family members in gangs. Okay, some of the people I interviewed, they had fathers in gangs. Some of the other people I interviewed, they had grandparents in gangs. Right. So this is like a multi generational thing. And so, if you guys know anything about family dynamics, then you would understand why people join gangs when they have family members in gangs. Okay, so family dynamics very important, and that's probably something I'm going to talk about, in future videos. Okay, there's a lot of stuff I want to talk to you guys about. So another reason why people join gangs is because simply growing up in a neighborhood with gangs, kids they're very impressionable. So they see a gang member out in the street, right? Because they're outside throwing away their garbage, and you see people hanging around, and then there might be some girls out there hanging out with those guys. They're like, "Oh, wow, that's pretty cool." Gang kids are very impressionable. So just by living in a neighborhood of gangs, they might end up joining gangs. Right? It's all about their environment. Okay, and so some people join gangs also because they have friends that are involved with gangs. Right? Some people join gangs because they needed protection. Somebody's after them. Say, "Hey, I need protection. I want to join a gang." Some people join gangs because it's a support system, right? That's where they get their friendships. Okay, I could go on and on and on why people join gangs, but I'm not going to. So let's go ahead and talk about gangs and gang objectives, right? So just like with any group, right, there's objectives and there are codes of conduct, right? This is just what people live by, rules for people to live by. And gangs have their own code of conduct, right? So one of the objectives is to kind of keep each other safe, right? Protect one another, right? The other objective is to keep the neighborhood or their territory safe, right? Keep it from being overran, right? Being taken over by another gang. So that's another objective. Um, the other objective is to kind of keep their gang from going extinct, right? They don't want their gang to go away. So what they do is they recruit people that they feel will be able to uphold their mission and code of conduct, right? And by recruiting, they call it the initiation, they call it a jump in. So some, gangs have it 30 seconds, some a minute, right? But basically, they're showing how tough this person is, and if they're strong enough to be in a gang, and so they jump them in. They basically beat them up for a few seconds or how long or ever it is. It's different for every gang. Okay, so some of the code of conducts, right? This is the rules that they live by. Okay, this is what they believe in. Never leave a friend when a friend is in trouble. So, for example, if a friend is in a fight, right? He's getting into a fight. You don't leave him. Okay, you got to be there to stay with him and fight with him, protect him. Because if you don't, and you say run away and leave him there, what may happen is you might get punished by the gangs, and so they could maybe jump you, right? Beat you up, make you do various things to earn the respect back. Or sometimes they might just kick you out, right? That could happen. Okay, so the other code of conduct is don't ever leave the gang, which you can't quit. Once you come in, you can't get out. And sometimes in some gangs, if you do quit, they might end up killing you. And so that's kind of like another reason why it's hard to get out of gangs because you're not going to have any respect and might end up hurting you. Okay, the other code of conduct is to never tell on anyone, especially to the police. Okay, so never talk to the police, never snitch on anybody, right? That's a no-no. Okay. The other code of conduct is don't ever target the innocent. However, you know, as you know, this is really hard. I don't think they actually follow this rule because you hear it on the news. people that are innocent are being targeted all the time. Maybe not by like, gang violence, but through like, robbing and stuff. They do that. Okay. So those are some of the code of conduct. And another one, never betray your friend. Again, loyalty, right? Dying for the gang is honorable, right? Um, when you see somebody that's a gang member that's opposing gang from you, it's on site. They call it on site. They call it a green light, where you see them, you have to attack them. And then the other code of conduct to kind of live by is try to make money by any means. So moving on to life experiences of gang members. Okay, like I said, a lot of this information that I'm giving to you guys right now, it's not from the books, right? This is something that I've gained from doing work with people involved with gangs. Okay, so therapy, interviews, whatever you want to call it, right? I've interviewed, man, I want to say thousands of gang members, right, in the San Francisco Bay Area. So the life experience of gang members, they have a lot in common. Okay, most have had a bad childhood growing up. Okay, so family members that maybe are addicted to alcohol, drugs, cocaine, meth, right? Those kind of things. They have parents that may have mental health problems, right? They experience a lot of poverty. Okay, as you guys know, if you guys watch my other videos, right, poverty actually creates a lot of mental health issues, right? And you guys can go back. I forgot what your videos are, but just go back and watch them. I have 3. Um, and the other thing that a lot of gang members experience growing up is a lot of abuse. And man, the stories that they've told me, right, what they've gone through as a child, right, you would never expect that to happen to people. Like, how could this even happen? So, I've heard the stories, guys. Like, a lot of stuff goes on, and a lot of things happen to people that are in gangs, at an early age. So abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, they've been neglected, emotional abuse, you name it, they probably experienced it. Okay. The other thing too is that their experience at home, their home life is not stable, right? It's not a stable home life. Actually, their home life is not nurturing at all. It's not a nurturing environment. It's actually where all the stress is at. Okay, so actually being at home is where all the stress is at. And so if you remember from my other videos, right? Stress, that means that there's discomfort, there's pain. And we as people, we do not like stress, we do not like pain or discomfort. And when that happens, we're either gonna fight, right? Fight it, or flight, run away from it. Okay? So the home environment brings a lot of stress to these people, right? And so because of that, a lot of times they don't want to be at home. So they look for support elsewhere, right? They find support elsewhere in the streets. They look for supports in the streets, and they look for guidance in the streets. And what do they find in the streets, right? That's the thing. When you're in the streets, there's so many obstacles, so many challenges. And for the most part, they find poor role models, right? They find role models that tell them, hey, go do this, go do that, steal this from me, I'll give you this. These are role models that they're finding on the streets. Okay. Again, when they're out in the streets, right, they're unsupervised. Okay, they turn to drugs and alcohol. Why? Okay, this is the thing. Most gang members turn to drugs and alcohol because there's a lot of stuff going on in their life, and they're having a lot of issues, mental health issues. And drugs and alcohol, they temporarily make it go away. And eventually that leads to drugs and alcohol addiction. Okay. And from there, they drop out of school. Sometimes they don't come home. Okay. Their home, like I was saying, is a stressor. So they tell me, right? Sometimes their home becomes like a hotel where they only go there to eat and sleep. And then when the morning comes or the afternoon comes when they wake up, they just leave because they don't want to be at home. That's where all the stress is at. Okay. And so with this routine that I was just sharing with you, right? These behaviors, this becomes a part of their life. Right? This is all they know, and next thing you know, their lives are headed down a wrong path, and it's spiraling out of control. But they don't know it yet. Because why? Because they've gotten used to it. They adapt to it. They're under the influence of drugs and alcohol, and then they just get used to it. Okay, so moving forward, let's go ahead and talk about what do gang members do when they're hanging out with each other, socializing, right? Because it's probably something that's intriguing for some people because most people don't know gang members. So what do they do when they hang out together? So basically, gang members pretty much do the same thing mostly everybody does, right? The only difference is that you know gang members sometimes talk about committing crimes, and sometimes they go out and commit crimes, right? But pretty much they do the same things that normal people do. They talk about sports, they talk about girls, they talk about video games, right? They talk about people, they gossip, they even talk about goals, life goals, right? They talk about the cars they want, they talk about making money, okay? And then other things they talk about when they hang out with each other, they talk about, the past of when they used to go to jail, who they fought, right? Stuff like that, bragging to each other, right? It's just basically, just talking to each other, wasting time, right? They do what regular people do. The only difference is sometimes they do criminal activities, right? So, moving forward, let's go ahead and talk about the psychology of gang members in America. Okay, and so I want to let you guys know that and this is from again, right? I've been in this field for almost 19 years of mental health. I've been working with a lot of gang members. And so my experience in working and interviewing gang members, right? A significant majority of gang members have unresolved complex traumas, right? Much of their psychology, much of their behavior is impacted by mental health issues and substance use addiction. Okay. So the reason why they're making all these bad choices a lot of times because of the mental health issues and the addiction that they're going through. Okay. And all of this is because of their environment and to cope, right? That's why they joined the gang. Okay. Not necessarily saying that, they have an excuse to join a gang, but these are the reasons why, right? This was what this video is about, is to help my viewers understand, gangs in America, right? Problems of gangs in America. Okay. So, psychology of gang members in America. Being a gangster is their identity. Okay. It gives them meaning in life, a sense of belonging, a sense of direction, right? So, the thing too about the gangster psychology, is that they have a distorted sense of respect, right? So they believe that the more you engage in self-destructive behavior, the more respect is earned. So basically, uh, the more fights you get into, the more jail time you get, means that basically you get a lot of respect from other people, and that's what people in general want, right? We want respect, okay? But this is the way gang members get respect. It's a little bit different, right? This is a whole different culture. There's this gang culture right here that we're talking about, okay? So the longer a person is involved with gangs, it's just going to be harder for them to get out of it, right? That's just how it is, okay? So, with that said, this is kind of the end of the video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned something from this video, okay? It's about social problems in America, gangs, and, you know, that's why I make these videos, because I want my audience, my viewers, to be aware, right, of the importance of mental health for everyone, okay? And thanks so much for watching my fourth video. More to come, right? I hope it was educational and entertaining. Please, guys, like, comment, and subscribe. I'll greatly appreciate it. And if you have some suggestions, go ahead and leave it in the comment section, okay? And until then, I'll see you in the next video. All right, take care.